On this KD day, we have a lot to get to with Zach Tawatari. We'll bring in Jackson Gatlin in a minute. Up first, though, thumbs up or thumbs down on this trade, Zach?
2 thumbs up.
All right.
The Rockets needed some scoring. They went out and got one of the best scorers in the NBA, and they didn't pay too steep of a price, in my opinion, but I know we'll get to that.
I'm on the thumbs up side as well, because you're looking at a guy, PJ Carlesimo, former NBA coach, calls Durant a 50-40-90 guy. 50% shoots 50% from the field, 40% from three-point range, 90% from the line. The Rockets don't have anybody like that, even at his advanced age. So I'm thumbs up, but also because of the guys you kept, and you also kept 2 first-round draft picks in 27 and 29 from the Phoenix Suns, and those will be very, very big down the line.
Yeah, and to not have to give up too much in terms of the guys who are in your young core, which we know took the Rockets all the way to the 2nd seed this year in the Western Conference, to give up Jalen Green, he's been inconsistent. I don't blame them for wanting to give up Jalen Green. And then as far as that 10th pick in this year's draft, we really don't know what this draft is going to yield. So I think overall, a good trade for the Rockets.
Now, earlier I asked Jackson Gatlin from the Locked On Rockets podcast, who'd been talking about the possibility of this trade for some time, which side he feels Rockets fans have been on regarding KD coming to Houston.
Rockets fans were kind of split down the middle. There are a lot of Rockets fans that are completely bought in on the vision and this idea of trading for Kevin Durant and what he could bring to this Houston Rockets team. He very much addresses the biggest weakness this team had this past year, which was the inability at stretches during the regular season and very clearly there in that first round series against the Golden State Warriors to just get buckets sometimes when the Rockets needed them. Offense has been the Achilles heel of this team this past season. Other Rockets fans, not so much. They wanted to stay the course. They wanted to stick with the continuity angle that Rafael Stone spoke quite a bit about at his exit press conference, wanted to stay the path with Jalen Green and see what he could grow and develop into and maybe become a star somewhere down the line. But this move signifies that the Rockets were ready to move on from Jalen Green, that they identified KD as the piece that could elevate them into true title contention with Ime Udoka running the show.
Now, there's a lot of mentions on our KHOU 11 Facebook page about KD's age. He's too old. What's your biggest concern?
Well, I think the injury concern is probably my biggest concern, but at the same time, yes, he is older, but 25, 26-year-old superstars are not available. This is the cost of doing business, right? To not have to give up the whole farm, essentially, to be able to get that player. So overall, yes, concerned about the health, but that's what you get in this situation.
Without a doubt. And I think, is KD a true leader? Reviews have been mixed on that. And certainly finding the right formula is so important. I think that is a concern. Is KD the guy who can shoulder this Rockets team and carry them? Clearly the Rockets feel good about this. So how does Jackson view this dynamic?
I think concerns in that regard are probably warranted given how you've seen KD's career kind of play out to this point. But even if you have doubts about, his ability to lead a locker room, to be the loudest voice on a team, to set an example in that regard, I don't think there's any questions about his work ethic or what he does from a basketball production standpoint. And frankly, the Rockets don't really need him to be that guy. This Rockets team and organization doesn't need that from KD because they have that in droves elsewhere. Ime Udoka is very much the leader of this Rockets team. Fred VanVleet is an extension of Ime Udoka on the floor, and he's very vocal, and he's a leader for this team. Other young players like Alperen Sengun, Amin Thompson, and Jabari Smith Jr., all of their voices have grown and become amplified over these last couple of years, really embracing this identity that Ime Udoka has set here in Houston. So no, I think that KD can just come to Houston and he can just be who he is. He can be a top 10 player. He can get buckets. He doesn't have to worry about being this, bleeding heart, emotional leader for this team. He can lead by example, and he can be the best player on the floor while doing it.
And I believe Ime Udoka, the fact that these two have history together, Ime believes he knows which buttons to push to really get the best out of Kevin Durant. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. This is something that I feel like has been kind of in the works for a while now. Like a KD trade has been staring the Rockets in the face since this past NBA trade deadline, where we kind of identified, okay, Houston's this awesome, stalwart defensive team. They're kind of this juggernaut where, on any given night, their defense really gives them a chance to win some of these games, but they really just didn't have an answer offensively. And they leaned on this, mantra of sometimes you, sometimes me, always us, which is really fun and pretty, and it's kind of a nice thing to believe in. But at the end of the day, it was very frustrating for this team, and I'm sure incredibly frustrating for Ime Udoka, not knowing which player he could rely on in the closing moments of a game, who his go-to guy was to try and get them over the hump and win some of these close basketball games. And now that question is gone. KD is your go-to guy. KD is your number one guy. And you've still got a couple of other really talented young guys in Alperen Şengün and Ime Thompson flanking him as they grow and kind of come into their own in these next few years.
Kevin Durant played in 62 games last season, or this season. I imagine the Rockets would be fine with anywhere from 55 to 65 games, or no?
I think something in that range. And frankly, this last season is kind of it's a weirder example to use, if only because this Suns team they were out of the race like a third of the way into the season. They were mentally checked out so quickly into this last campaign. And then they kind of blindsided KD with all those trade rumors seemingly out of nowhere at the deadline, which is where that relationship really started to ultimately fracture. And so he had an ankle injury late in the season that he probably wasn't super severe, that he could have probably come back from. So I think if you look at KD and if you can get plus 60 games out of him in the NBA regular season, and then as long as he's healthy going into whatever next year's postseason looks like, it's a win for the Rockets.
Another win, simply keeping Şengün and Ime Thompson and Jabari Smith and Reed Shepherd. Do you look at that as a win as well?
I mean, absolutely. Like, the fact of the matter is, look, Şengün and Ime, they weren't going to be in these talks to begin with. They were completely untouchable. There were some rumors about, are the Rockets going to chase after Giannis? And maybe at that point, one of those two names would have had to be in the outgoing package to make it worth Milwaukee's while. But the whole reason this trade works is because you're getting KD for pennies on the dollar. The outgoing package of Jalen Green, Dillon Brooks, the 10th overall pick in this year's draft, and then 5 second rounders. That's chump change to be able to add a top 10 player who, yes, he's going into, he'll be 37 this next season, but he shows no signs of drop off in his production, in what he can give to a contending team. Just this past year, he averaged just under 27 points per game, 6 rebounds, 4 assists on ridiculous shooting splits, shooting 43% from downtown. Just, this guy is going to step in and address so many problems for this Rockets team. So you look at the fact that they were able to get him, and the only young player that they gave up was Jalen Green. That's a huge win, because the Rockets do still fully believe in their future that all these young guys kind of point towards. And that's the beauty of it, that they now have an ability to contend now at the highest level for the next 2 or 3 years with Kevin Durant, while also still having an incredibly bright future with Alperen Şengün, Jabari Smith Jr., Tari Eason, Ime Thompson, Cam Whitmore, Reed Shepherd. Those guys aren't going anywhere, at least not right now.
And you still have the draft picks in 27, the first round picks from the Suns in 27 and 29. And listen, the number 10 overall pick, there is a high probability that guy, whoever he is, wouldn't have even played this season for the Rockets, given that you didn't even play your number 3 pick last year in Reed Shepherd.
No, you're absolutely right, Jason. Look, this was a dynamic where there were reports that the Rockets were looking at either trading out of the draft completely or trading down in the draft and recouping some future assets. Ultimately, this was a pick that I would have been surprised if they would have made, because you're right. There's only so much runway for these guys to get actual playing time. And what this move does, by moving on from Jalen Green, by moving on from Dillon Brooks, kind of consolidating those two guys into Kevin Durant, it opens up a pathway for more minutes for guys like Reed Shepherd, like Cam Whitmore, to really try and carve out a spot for themselves in this Rockets rotation going forward. And to your point about those future Suns picks, that's huge. The fact that Rafael Stone didn't budge and didn't have to give up either of the 2027 pick or the 2029 picks that they still own from the Phoenix Suns. Look, the Suns have a 2-year window, Jason, where they're going to try and compete with whatever this semblance of a roster looks like in the aftermath of a KD trade, with Devin Booker as their best player. But it could come off the tracks really quickly in Phoenix. And when it does, the Rockets are going to be waiting there with that 2027 pick and that 2029 pick looking very, very juicy, either to just use as outright selections to add more young talent to their current roster or to grease the wheels for future trades down the line.
Dillon Brooks certainly was one of those culture setters, tone setters. Is it possible to find a Dillon Brooks light out there before the season? Do you think the Rockets need one?
I don't think the Rockets necessarily need one. You know, so much of, and first and foremost, I want to say Dillon is, it's going to suck losing Dillon Brooks, right? He's a guy who very much ingratiated himself to the fan base. He is a guy that you love to hate when he's on one of the other 29 teams, and you love to cheer for him when he's on your team. And it very much felt that way. That was the Dillon Brooks experience for the past 2 years. He elevated himself as a shooter, became the team's best three-point shooter this past season. And he's a guy that you love going to war with and you love watching go to war each and every night for your team. So losing him stings. Certainly he was that kind of defensive backbone or enforcer for this Rockets team, but he's no longer the team's best defender. Amin Thompson surpassed him in that role this season. He's their new ace defender. And they've got so many other great defensive pieces left on the team with Jabari, with Tari. Kevin Durant is a plus defender. Rockets fans may be surprised to hear that, but yes, 37-year-old Kevin Durant is still going to be able to defend at a very high level in Ime Udoka's system. It's going to be awesome to witness. So they shouldn't experience much of a defensive drop-off. But losing a guy like that helped kind of set this culture is a significant loss. But I think that he did such a good job in the 2 years that he was here. And you'll still have Fred VanVleet. You'll still have Ime Udoka. You'll still have plenty of this established culture and identity. And hey, we know for a fact that Dillon Brooks wasn't the only loose cannon on the team willing to, sling some guys around. We saw Amin Thompson get into his fair share of scraps this past season, like Ragdoll and Tyler Herro across the Toyota Center floor. So the Rockets have guys that are more than capable of standing up for themselves and standing up for their teammates, even without Dillon Brooks.
There certainly is a idea that Kevin Durant doesn't play defense, so that's good to hear. Are there any worries that Jalen Green will now elevate his game to move into that next level superstar? Or is it a situation that you haven't seen that consistently here and you're willing to bet against that happening?
I think that's exactly what the Rockets did here, right? They have 4 years of data. Even if you want to throw out the first 2 years with Steven Silas and the rebuilding years, they have 2 years of very solid data of Jalen Green in what was supposed to be and was a winning basketball team, going 41-41 that first year with Udoka and 52-30 this past year, and a full 7-game playoff series. That is a lot of data to be able to look at for Jalen Green and make a very informed decision. Do we believe in his future still? Or do we believe more in the ability of Kevin Durant to elevate us right now into championship contention? Jalen Green could still pan out and he could still become an all-star somewhere down the line. But I think by the Rockets making this trade, they are signaling that they don't necessarily think or believe at this point that Jalen Green can be that number one guy on a true championship contender. He could still have a very successful NBA career elsewhere, but it doesn't feel like he's going to ever be that true star player that they really hoped that they were getting when they drafted him number 2 overall.
Jackson Gatlin, as always, thanks for being on Sports Extra.
Thanks so much for having me, Jason.
Let's be real. Ime Udoka has set the culture for this team. Kevin Durant is a hired gun, and hey, he shoots very well.
And I'm guessing Ime believes he knows which buttons to push to get the very best out of Kevin Durant. And now it's time for our drive of the game. And our drive of the game, that's why the Rockets are getting Kevin Durant.
Oh, yeah. The mid-range game, especially with Durant, is so good, and that's something they've struggled so much with. I mean, his ability to create his own offense, be a top 10 offensive player, is exactly what they need to get them over the top.
And you have that big dog when you need a bucket in must-get situations. And now for reaction around the country in the monitor, that is Doug Branson, Matt Moore, and Hayes Johnson from Locked On NBA. Let's get a sense of how they are sizing up this trade.
Oh my God, the Suns got killed. Look, I get it. He's 37. It's an expiring contract. He had an Achilles injury. He's not exactly a guy that makes his teammates better. His teams don't seem to perform at the level that we expect. It's Kevin Durant, who still last season was a bucket from anywhere on the floor. And Houston wanted him. And Houston had all your picks. And you didn't get any of them back. You got Jalen Green, the worst contract on the Rockets that they only gave because they felt like they had to, because it gave them the opportunity to do a deal like this. You didn't get Alfred Şengün. You didn't get Jabari Smith Jr. You didn't get Amin Thompson. You didn't get Cam Whitmore.
The Rockets got exactly what they want. I don't know if I feel like they got annihilated in the way that you do. I definitely think they didn't get as much back as what they were thinking they were going to get.
And there you have it. It will be very interesting to see if Jalen Green can take that next step and become the player that many thought he would be when he was drafted.
There were signs of that
Yes.
this season. Definitely signs. You got to give Jalen Green credit. He did steady it out, but overall still so much inconsistency, especially with the scoring. I realize he led them in points scored per game during the regular season, but overall just not enough to say this guy is a superstar. We see him being one in the future.
Also, give Jalen credit, became a much better defensive player as well. It will be very interesting to find out perhaps what other teams were offering, because man, I'm getting the sense from those in Arizona it's not going well. Now, here is the view from the Suns. We are talking Brendan Clean and Benjamin Garcia. They are tackling from Locked On Suns whether Phoenix got enough from Houston.
I cannot believe they took back a deal for Jalen Green. Like, everything feels like a lie. We were told, this is why you can't believe any of the reporting, any of the betting markets, any of anything, man, because we were told before Minnesota Timberwolves had a better offer. I think the Raptors potentially might have been a better offer than this, because we always thought Jabari Smith Jr. was in the deal. I mean, you'd gotten a better pick too.
The number 10 pick is a decent thing to get. Now, everybody's saying that this is an 8-player draft, so it's like, of course they would get a pick right outside of that. It sounds so stupid to say that this trade came down to Dillon Brooks, but maybe they actually did like that part of it more than some of the other things, and all else equal, they just said, screw it. That's a guy we kind of like having around, and we'll figure the rest out.
And we really haven't talked much about Dillon Brooks' impact. However, adding Kevin Durant, the odds makers very bullish now on Houston's chances. If Kevin Durant is on this team right now or during this past season, I'm thinking they should have been a Western Conference Finals team at least, right?
That should be the expectation going into next year, especially because you've got another year under Ime Udoka. This year, I don't know that they definitely would have made it to the Western Conference Finals, but they would have gone a lot deeper in those series. I think this team still needed to mature, but next year, going in with Kevin Durant, you should be thinking Western Conference Finals or bust. You don't sign or trade for a 37-year-old player to sign him to a 6-year deal. So you got to get results now.
No doubt, no doubt. So that is our take on the Kevin Durant trade. Thank you so much to Jackson Gatlin and our friends at Locked On as Sports Extra now rolls on.